Hi everyone and welcome to Be Colorful. I'm Gege and this is the second part of the video in which I create mini cards using the Tonic Craft Kit number 38. In the first video I created this cute gift wallet and the first two cards. You will find the link to that video below in the description box at the end of this video and in the tab that appears above. I also remind you that in the description box and on my blog you will find the list of all the products that I'll use in this video. Before continuing, I'd like to share with you the beautiful work of a subscriber who was inspired by my videos. Thank you, Anne, to send me the photos of your beautiful card. Also, thank you for always following me from the first video I posted. If you also want to share your work with the small Be Colorful community, you can send me the photos by email at this address. I'd love to see what you create with your hands and how my ideas have given you some inspiration. Now let's start with the card number 3. The intricate dies of the kit are great to create DIY stencils. To create your stencil, you can use a acetate sheet or a cardstock. In this case, however, they will be used just a few times, while the acetate can be washed. Or again, I bought some sheets for stencils. And now let's create our homemade stencils, simply by die cutting the figures we like best. Die cutting on acetate can be difficult and you may get uncut parts. For this reason, I'm using the precision plate from Sizzix, which is slightly thicker than normal acrylic plate. You can also try to insert in your sandwich also some cardstock outside the plate. This will increase the thickness of the sandwich, therefore the pressure exerted. After creating all my stencils, I just have to use them. Before proceeding, I'm going to prepare a small panel on ivory pearlescent paper of the kit using this die. For this card, I will also create my homemade glitter paste. To create a glitter paste, we need liquid glue. I'm gonna use gel medium, but you can also try it with normal tacky glue. The important thing is that once dry, it is clear. Then we need glitter, of course. So I take some glue and place it on a piece of acetate. I don't put it on my work surface since I'll surely make a mess that I don't want to clean. Well, now I add the glitters and mix. I keep adding until I'm satisfied. And here is a homemade glitter paste. This is a great way to use glitter. If nothing else, the least disastrous I know. Now I can spread my glitter paste on the panel I created using my DIY stencil and spreading the paste with a spatula. I gently remove the stencil and let it dry. In the meantime, since I made too much glitter paste, I continue to make stencils on black and white cardstock. Once the pearlescent ivory panel is dry, I'm gonna complete it by adding another strip of glitter paste using another stencil. And let it dry again. Once dry, I can proceed with the creation of the card. For the card base, I'll use one of these pre-folded cards in A2 size, that's 4¼ by 5½ inches. Then, from the cotton paper included in the kit, I'm gonna create another panel using the same die that I used for the pearlescent ivory panel. I'm going to add some interest on my background by creating a few drops with Mica Myst included in the kit. And I dry with an embossing tool. To embellish the card, on the green classic card, I'm going to die cut 2 strips with the stitch strip die from the kit. I plan to create a belt. So I'm going to round the corners of one of the strips with a punch board. And on the silver satin paper, I'm going to die cut one of the buckles of the set. Finally, I'm going to stick everything on the ivory pearlescent panel. Before assembling the card, I'm going to stamp the sentiment for someone special included in the kit. To make sure I stamp straight, I'm using the stamping platform to position the stamp well before stamping. As ink, I'm using Versafine Onyx Black. I clean the stamp and I'm going to add with the grey ink from the kit a darker border on the card base, so as to create a frame that will make the edges stand out slightly. Now I can proceed to stick everything down. For the stencil panel, I'm going to use some foam tape to add dimension to the card. I'm going to add some drops of Gel Drop Limoncello from the kit, and thus ending the third card. With all the panels I made before due to the excess glue I used to make my glitter paste, I can make other cards. First, after creating my card base on white cardstock in standard size, thus 4¼ by 5½ inches, I'm going to cut out another panel of iridescent paper from the kit, which will completely cover the card base and create the borders of the main panel. Then I'm going to cut out the main panel on white cardstock, that is a 5 1/4 by 4-inch rectangle. So I'm gonna create my background using the Mica Myst from the kit. If we spray from a distance, we will get bigger drops. The closer we spray, the more the color will concentrate, forming larger spots. Next, I'm gonna sprinkle some embossing powder, adding a touch of yellow. In this case, not having used inks, I have to melt the powder well from below, otherwise it would fly, and only lastly finish the embossing from above. Now I'm going to cut out some of the stencils in rectangle panels. Then I'm gonna add finishing edges to each panel. For the white one, I'll use the yellow classic card. For the black ones, the iridescent paper. For the sentiment, I'm going to die cut on iridescent paper using this die from the kit. Still using this die, I'm going to create another sentiment on the yellow classic card. To make the embossing more visible, I'm going to apply a touch of grey ink. I decided to divide this sentiment into two parts, separating them between think and faux. And I proceed to glue everything. As for the sentiment, on the black panel I glue the first part, a little think, embossed on the yellow paper. While on the white panel I'm going to glue the second part, for someone special, embossed on iridescent paper. Gluing the finishing borders of the main panel, and all on the card base. As a finishing touches, I'm going to create a few drops of gel drop limoncello and sprinkle some glitter on it, thus creating my homemade glitter drop. And the card is finished. For the fifth card, I will continue to use my homemade stencils, but this time I'm going to use other products from the kit to perform this technique. First, I'm gonna use some mixed media paper, as I plan to use liquid mediums. So I get a panel that is 4¼ by 5½ inches, but which I will cut out further later on. So now I proceed with the stencil technique, using the Mica Myst of the kit. I'm going to dry it, and flipping the stencil, I'm going to stamp the verso, since the color is still there. I continue with these two techniques until I'm happy with my background. And this is the result. Honestly, I can say that I really like it. But the stencil techniques that I show you in this video don't end there. I'm going to use another medium now, the embossing powder. So with a clear embossing ink, I'm going to dab the stencil, then I spread the embossing powder and melt it with the embossing tool. I'm also going to use my stencil as a stamp, dabbing the clear ink on the surface. Clean up the edges and stamp. I proceed to emboss with the same powder. And I continue with these two techniques, adding these yellow banners here and there in my background. And that is the final result. Next, I'm going to cut out the panel to get a 4 by 5¼ rectangle. Then I'm gonna add some black finishing edges. The black frames can make the colors pop out even more. In addition, I'm going to finish the panel by adding edges of silver satin paper, thus reflecting the color palette proposed in the kit. Just to save some of this special paper, I'm going to cut out the center of this panel. However, to keep everything nice and even, I'm gonna glue a piece of leftover paper in the central part. So now let's move on to the sentiment. On black cardstock, I'm going to die cut It's Your Birthday from the kit. But I'm not sure I like it. So I decided to emboss it with the embossing powder that I used for the background. I also decided to add a base by die cutting some ivory cardstock with the strip die of the kit, to which I'm going to add black borders and silver. So the sentiment now matches perfectly with the edges of the main panel. I glue the sentiment and I'm going to chop off the left end so I can stick it on the panel. Okay, now I quickly prepare my card base on 300 GSM ivory cardstock in standard size, that's 4¼ by 5½. I'm gonna glue everything onto the card base using double-sided tape and a little liquid glue. I'm going to finish the card by creating a few drops of Gel Drop Limoncello in line with the background banners. That is the absolute protagonist of this card. And so I finish the fifth card too. With the last card of this video, I'll show you another technique to use the stencils we have created, taking advantage of another medium contained in the kit, the Metro Grey ink pad. To apply the color through the stencil, you can use this kind of blending brushes, or this blending tool with a sponge, or a normal sponge that you have at home. So, on a white cardstock panel, I'm going to place my stencil, fixing it with masking tape. Then I proceed to apply the color with the blending brush. I recommend you always proceed with a slight coat, then intensifying the color with several coats. You can always darken, but it is difficult to lighten once a lot of color is applied. So I remove the stencil, this is my favorite part, and I reposition it to make the strip longer. I spread the color as I did before. And here we go, it's time to use this banner to create a card. First of all, I'm going to cut out the panel to form the strip. To which I'm going to add some finishing edges with the classic yellow card of the kit. I'm gonna chop off both banners to be 5.5 long. For a touch of silver, I'm going to cut out 2 strips of the embossed paper from the kit, which will be 2 more finishing borders. Next, I'm going to make my card base on white cardstock, that's 4.25 by 5.5 inches. So I glue my banners on it. For the banner created with the stencil technique, I'm gonna use foam tape to give a nice dimension to the card. Finally, I'm going to glue the 2 strips of embossed silver paper at the very edges of the banner. And let's move on to the sentiment. With the VersaFine Onyx Black, I stamped one of the stamps of the kit and then die cut it with one of the strip die of the set. Now I'm adding some finishing edges with the yellow classic card. Finally, I'm going to glue the sentiment on the card by adding small pieces of leftover paper, as well as some foam tape, in order to have the sentiment on the same level as the banner. I finished the card by adding just a few drops here and there of the Gel Drop Limoncello. The second part of the video ends here. Now you can create a lot of stencils with your dies and try many techniques with the texture pastes you bought in the shop or homemade as I've shown you, as well as using ink pads, sprays or embossing powders. Even if I used the product of the Tonic Craft Kit 38 in the video, no one forbids you to put my tips into practice using other products you have in your craft room. So have fun! Thanks for watching, and if you'd like, leave me a nice thumbs up and write me in the comment which stencil technique you liked best and which one you tried or will try. Thanks again, see you next time, bye bye! E be colorful!